All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Friday Fix. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today's session is going to be all about heat pumps and taking the mystery out of it. So we have Tessa Hall with us here today. She's one of our quality assurance specialists. She learned a lot about the heat pump, I think, back in the Greener Homes days and became our resident expert. And as there have been changes with the heat pump calculator, we wanted to have a focused informational Friday Fix session for reference, an area of where you can ask some questions as they come up. Easier. And I'll just ask everybody to mute in the background here. I'll definitely, you can unmute yourself and ask questions at some point throughout the training here. Basically, so our Friday Fix, for those of us or for those of you who haven't joined us yet for these sessions, we like to do them about once a month, and it's meant to be a short informational session, tools, tricks, tips for our Energy Advisor members to help streamline your process, to dig into some products or some processes that you wanted some more information about. So anytime that you would like some more information or you have a subject that you want to dive deeper in, please reach out to us anytime. We will be building out our calendar for the fall after taking the summer off, and I'd love to have some feedback from you on what you'd like to see. So to start our presentation today, I'm going to do a few quick polls. It gives us a little bit of an idea of where you're located, who's in the virtual room with us, where you're joining us from. First of all, which local are you joining us from? Are you members with Vancouver Island, Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, the Okanagan, Interior, Northern BC? Are you outside of the province and joining us remotely? To get a good idea if we've got, oh wow, Vancouver Island. All right, well represented today, 45%. Excellent. That's great. And then, and what level of performance are the majority of your clients building to? Are they building code basics, step code requirements? Are they higher performance builders, step 4, step 5, net zero? Whatever gets them occupancy, no shade there. Yeah, great. Share those results. A good mix there. Lots of step 4. Excellent. Okay. And which programs are you working the most within? Code compliance only, code compliance plus EnerGuide, EnerGuide for new homes, guide for existing homes. Yeah, code compliance plus EnerGuide label seems to be great. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So we will get right into it. I want to let you know that I'm here in the background to facilitate any of the questions that you have while Tess is going through her presentation. Please feel free to put up your digital hand and you can talk if that's easier for you, or you can put them in the chat box and I will facilitate asking those questions on your behalf. When there's a moment, when Tessa takes a breath, I'll get in there with a question for you. But please feel free to share any questions and we'll go through them. And with that, I'm going to hand over the reins to Tessa and we're going to take some mystery away from this heat pump calculator.
Good morning, everyone. So for those of you that haven't met me, most of you have, but I am Tessa Hall. I am based over on Vancouver Island. I am just one of the QA specialists for the CHBA. And I have had a lot of experience with the heat pump calculator. The Canada Greener Homes program definitely beat it into me how to use it. And with some of the advancements in technology and the different rating systems that are available for heat pumps now, there's been some updates to the calculator as it's grown through the program, and it can be, until you know how to use it well, it can be really tricky. So I thought that it would be best for us all to kind of get a little information session together and watch, and we're going to go through a few different examples of different setups of heat pumps and how to use a calculator and apply it to that. So the whole idea today is to kind of unlock the mystery of how we're supposed to use it and when, and then we'll go into some detail on specific situations where you're going to use it and what it looks like to actually use it in practice. So I'm going to actually use it and show you what the inputs should look like, where to put them. Okay. And then just some brief information on how to identify whether a heat pump is an air source heat pump or a cold climate heat pump as we're going through and collecting our data. So as of the last version of Hot 2000, not the one we're working on now, but the one before, the heat pump calculator must be used in a number of different scenarios. And to be honest, they are the majority of scenarios that we are modeling in a heat pump in Hot 2000 in. Um, and so here's kind of just a rough rundown of the general reasons you're going to use the calculator. If you have a cold climate heat pump, if you have a heat pump that's rated using the two metrics, or if there's a combination of either two air source heat pumps or a cold climate and a regular air source heat pump in um, your model. So how are you going to know that? Well, the first thing you're going to do is gather the information that you collected on site. You're going to get the make and model of your outdoor unit and your indoor unit, whether that's an air handler or a furnace and a coil. And then you're going to go and find your AHRI number. You can do this through the AHRI directory, or you can do it through NRCan's searchable product database. I personally find that the searchable product database is a little less forgiving when you're trying to input some of the data. And the AHRI database is typically where I'm going to start because it's just a little bit easier to maneuver. So as you're going through and you're looking, if, for example, you're using the AHRI database and you find your certificate for your matched units, it doesn't necessarily say on the certificate that it is a cold climate heat pump. It's going to say that it's been rated and how it's been rated. So in this one, we can see that it is rated in the CO2 and HSPF2 functions. So we know automatically that it needs to use the heat pump calculator, but we don't necessarily know that it is cold climate. And there are a couple different ways that you can determine that after finding the AHRI certificate. The first one is to go take your AHRI number and now go into the searchable product database from NRCan. It is much easier to find your combination if you already know that and filter down to just that number. And when you do that, your AHRI classification is going to show it as a cold climate if that's what it is in the product group, or it's going to show it as a regular air source heat pump. So right here is where it's going to tell you that yes, it is cold climate, and again, you need to use the calculator. After that, if it's not, or if the information is a little bit vague and you still think that you may need to use the calculator, for example, this one is a little bit of an older screenshot. NRCan is getting better with their product database and it is getting a little bit clearer, but this one tells us that the CO2 rating is available, but it doesn't mention whether the HSPF rating is in two metrics or in regular metrics. So this one is a little bit kind of confusing, and it could be a cold climate. It could need the calculator, but we're not quite sure. So again, if it has been rated with at least one of the metrics, you're going to need to use the calculator. But this one will just kind of give you an idea of where to start from. So just to remind, cold climate or HSPF2 and CO2 metrics, always going to use the calculator. You may also need to do it if you have multiple air source heat pumps or a mixture of cold climate and air source heat pumps in the house. So if you have two, you pretty much always are going to need the calculator. Again, that one's just another tick on the box. Okay, I need to know to open up the calculator and use it once I've got my data collected. Sometimes you're going to run into scenarios where your outdoor unit and your indoor unit are not matched properly. You don't have an AHRI certificate of matched units for those projects. If the home only has the one heating system and that is the only system present in the house, so it is going to get matched as, or it's going to get described as an unmatched system where you have a unit outside that's, say, train, and a indoor unit that's carrier or something like that. Those ones, you're going to follow the steps in HOT 2000 in the user guide and put it at its default settings. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But if it's a single unit like that, then absolutely you have a procedure to follow for that, and it does not need the calculator. However, there are definitely scenarios where you're going to run into multiple heat pumps in a dwelling unit or in a multiple dwelling unit home that you are going to need to use the calculator in conjunction with the HOT 2000 user guide in order to model. So if you've got one matched and one unmatched unit, or multiple units and one of them is unmatched, we're going to need to use the calculator there as well. Okay, so that is a very short rundown of when you're going to need to use the calculator. In general, it's a lot of the time. So typically what I will do is, as soon as I find my AHRI number, instead of, if it doesn't say that it's a cold climate heat pump, instead of going to the NRCan database and pulling that information, I'll just start to plug the information into the calculator and see if it pops up. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute here. But we've got the calculator and we've got our data. So this is where we get into kind of the more practical part of this, and we say, well, now what? How do we actually use this thing? And I just wanted to briefly touch on why we're using it. You've collected all this information. You have the HSPF and the SEER, you have the model numbers. Why can't you just put that directly into HOT 2000? This is a question I get a lot from EAs as I'm doing audits. And in general, the answer is that the software hasn't exactly caught up with the performance of heat pumps these days, and we almost need to trick the software into modeling the performance in a way that is more accurate and more representative of what's actually being installed in the home. And so the calculator has been created in order to help us put in the right inputs to trick HOT 2000 into working properly. So that is generally the reason why we're using it. So I'm going to go through 3 different situations today, 3 different scenarios. They should cover the majority of what I just talked about as to when you're going to use the calculator and how to use it, the different cold climate air source heat pumps that we're going to use. So the first one I'm going to do is a very simple option here, where we have a single home rancher, let's say. We've got a centrally ducted system. It is supplying all the heat for the home. There's only one heat pump in the house, and we've got an AHRI number and a weather location. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment while I pull up all the information here. There we go. Okay. And this is a great time as I'm pulling this up. Is there any questions in the chat so far, Vanessa?
Nope, not yet.
All right, great. So this first one. Okay. Yes. All right, excellent. So this first one, we've got a single family home. We've collected all the data. We know what our AHRI number is, and we know where our weather location is. So we're going to start on the general tab, and we are in BC. Our location for this one is Abbotsford. We have no change to this. This was designed primarily for the beginning of the Canada Greener Homes program. So this would give us inputs for D&E files for upgrades and recommendations as well. That's primarily what this box is around. So we don't need to do this in new construction. So I just leave it at no changes. It doesn't actually change anything in the outputs. It's really just there to trigger other pages.
I'm going to jump in for a second, please.
Yeah.
I see the RI certificate, but we don't see the calculator on our screen
Oh
right
no.
now.
Okay. Okay. Bear with me for a second. Oh, it doesn't seem to let me. Okay. I'm going to just open the calculator then. And you can see it now, Vanessa? Just the calculator?
Yes, we can see the
Okay.
calculator. Yeah, thank you.
Fabulous. All right. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, so we have plugged in our location in the general tab, and we've told the file that it doesn't need any of the inputs for D&E files. Now, the AHRI certificate that I had did not tell me whether it was a cold climate heat pump or not, but I have the number in the cold climate tab. The data is very, very easy to access. If you plug in your AHRI number here, and this one was 208.141.270, and then click import data, it's going to tell us if it is a cold climate or not automatically right in this little tab right here. So if it was not, um, it's just going to pop up like that and say that it's not found. It's not in the NEAT database. It is not, which is where all of this information is getting pulled from in the calculator. And it's just going to pop up like this. If that is the case, we're going to jump over to the air source heat pump tab, and we're going to do that in the next scenario. But for now, we'll clear our data back and we'll put that correct AHRI number in there. Okay, so that's all we need in order to truthfully use this heat pump calculator correctly in this scenario is that AHRI number. So we're going to import the data, and we're going to start to fill out these drop-down menus. There's not much to fill in here. The presence tab tells the calculator which one of these tabs to fill out and populate. Okay, so if you get to your PNN tab and it doesn't have any data here, it's likely because you selected the wrong thing in the presence tab. If the equipment type, and again, we're going to look at this a little bit later, but if the equipment type is anything other than central split, you may have to fill out some of the other data boxes here. For this one, we do not. The data boxes generally apply to ducted and non-ducted mini split systems. Okay, and then if we had multiple systems that were exactly the same, we could also select that here, and that will do some more calculations down here to help us average out performance of the systems. So it has generally calculated everything that we used to have to find in the NEAT database right here. All of the COPs at different temperatures, the performance at the different regions, all of that information is here. At this point, we're just going to click over to the PNN tab because that is what we're working on today. And this is going to give us a screenshot of exactly what should be in our HOT 2000 screen. With a small little note that it does start out some of the letters or numbers in the model codes, and HOT 2000 does want those replaced with what was actually observed on site. So this will kind of pop up. It's just a reminder to go back in. I know I've modeled this one system so many times that I know that both of these stars are double A's. So I know exactly what those are, but generally you're just going to want to jump back to your AHRI certificate or your photos from site and make sure that you input the actual data. Correct. So in a cold climate heat pump situation with the heat pump calculator, your efficiencies are always going to come out in COP. So that again is a flag to tell you that you have used the calculator correctly if the efficiencies that pop up here are in COP. Okay. So if you look down at the bottom of this portion of the screen here, this is the actual performance that's rated on your AHRI certificate. So this is the documentation that you're going to see on your AHRI certificate. This is the information that HOT 2000 needs to model this performance in a way that makes the system actually accept it. And so this is kind of the workaround that the calculator is performing for us in order for the calculator to tell HOT 2000 how to model properly or capture the efficiency properly, I should say. So I'm going to stop share for a second and I'll just switch over to my HOT 2000 screen. I do see that we have a chat. Is it a question that we should answer?
Oh, it was a comment about not being able to see the calculator. I
Oh,
don't
okay,
see another
great,
one in there.
great, great, great. Oh, no, that's the one thing. Oh, there it is. Okay, so if we take that information, and forgive me because the calculator is, I can't seem to side screen on the on Zoom here. So what I have done, I've gone into HOT 2000, I'm in the heating and cooling system, and I'm just copying down that information from the calculator. First thing, this is a central split system. This one specifically is an air handler and a outdoor condenser unit. In that case, and this is just a side note, but in that case, instead of hitting the baseboards as the type 1 system, it really should be an electric furnace. It more accurately captures the energy consumption from the fan or the forced air system. And it's a very small note, but it is in the HOT 2000 user guide that you should do that as well. So I switched it over from that and we go in and we're just going to copy and paste this information directly into the software. Temperature cutoff point should also always be restricted if you're using cold climate heat pump. So that is the simplest version of what we're going to do with the calculator. The second version that we're going to go after is going to be a MERB situation where we have multiple heat pumps. I'm going to pop it up here so you guys can see what I got. There we go. Okay, so on this one, we've got a house with a secondary suite. We've got 2 units in the house. One is heating the secondary suite, one is heating the main house. The main house is a strictly air source heat pump, centrally ducted for the house. We've got the AHRI number. Secondary suite, just to make things as simple as possible, it's a cold climate mini split single head, but it's been sized to heat and cool the entire unit. We'll say it's a bachelor pad. We've got the AHRI certificate for the mini split head as well. And then we've got our weather location. From there, we're going to take this information and we're going to go right into the calculator again. There we go. And go back. And on this one, Sisters Island was our location. And we have a mixture this time of a cold climate and an air source heat pump. So our cold climate unit is the single mini split head for the secondary suite. And the AHRI number for that, 215-792-219. We're going to input the data here, and it'll import on its own. The presence is in the PNN file, and it is a single head. Okay, so that's going to pull up all the information for that one. The second system, I'm going to have to go up because I can't side swipe. The second system, we're going to import into the air source heat pump tab instead of the cold climate because we've determined that it is not a cold climate. And it's going to be 214-772-932. Its presence, same thing, it's in a PNN file. This one is a centrally ducted system. And we have just the one system. Our values here are known because we do have an AHRI certificate for it. And this is where it gets kind of annoying. We're just going to have to manually type in the information. So it is a REAM. RG17. No, no, that didn't. I'll type it. I won't be lazy. Okay, we're going to pull the information on the heating capacity from the AHRI certificate. That one in this case is 22,400. This one and this one, we need to be really cautious about making sure we're putting the right inputs in here. Typically, I find in the AHRI certificates that the HSBF2 is rated in region 4. So we do need to make sure that we're changing this. In this one, it is region 4 and it is 8.5. And then we've got a CO2 rating. That is 18. Now we've filled out all the information that we need in here. We've told it that it's in the PNN file, and we've added in this system as well. Now we're going to just head over to the PNN tab, and it's going to calculate out the capacity of the multiple systems together and give us the inputs that we need in order to model the system in HOT 2000. As you can see, so the cold climate, just as a reminder, was the small single head system. And that is the one that's over here in its capacity, 9,500 BTUs. You can tell that it's just a little baby unit. But the overall capacity for this system is much larger. And that is because we are looking at the two systems together. Now, what's really nice about this, for those of you that have been doing this for a really long time, we do have info fields or details that need to be put into info field 6. And I, for the longest time, could never remember the order of the items that needed to go in there. This version of the calculator and all the subsequent versions, hopefully, have this information right here for you. So you can just copy and paste this information into your HOT 2000 file as well. It's also just a nice reminder that you need to do this portion. So that essentially is two systems, both matched in a single family home. Can I stop while I am setting up the next one and ask if there are any questions about what I just did?
I have a question about the info field stuff.
Oh, sure. Yep.
So are we putting in whatever the output is on the calculator for the info field?
So you mean the info field 6 section, the lower
Yeah,
portion that I was showing?
yeah. I think that's something that maybe we have missed.
So that is specifically the model number, AHRI number, and make of the opposing unit. So if you have two units, the primary one's going to end up being listed in the depth of the heating and cooling section in the
Hmm.
secondary system, just so that NRCan and we also know that you have modeled two systems. That information goes into info field 6.
So if it's just one system, then that doesn't populate.
That's right. And that's why I didn't talk about it on the first model through, just on anything that's got multiple systems.
Okay, sounds good. Good to know.
Awesome. All right. Now I got distracted because I was chatting and I didn't set that up properly. So just one second and I'll clear this all out. So in the next version, um, we're looking at what happens when you have one matched and one unmatched system. Um, from Hot 2000 or from NRCan's point of view, an unmatched system should, I'm just going to pull it up here, should be modeled a very specific way. And that is essentially a lot of the default information. Um, so when we open up Hot 2000, we put in a heat pump. The first thing it does, it puts it at 7 kWh. We know because we get that little blurb that pops up that you have to hit OK for the capacity. And then the HSPF and the SEER get defaulted to 5.9 and 10 respectively. What Hot 2000 user guide says is that 7 kilowatt hours or 24,000 BTUs, the output capacity there, that can be too high for some homes as we're modeling them. Much more likely on a newer home than it is on a D or an E file, but it can be too high. So what Hot 2000 gives us as direction there is once the rest of the file has been completely modeled, so all your windows, all your insulation values, everything else, your air tightness test has been done. You're going to go into Hot 2000 and you're going to run it, you're going to select it as the 1.25 cooling load, which is kind of the default setting we're supposed to model at the beginning anyways, and run a calculate. And what we're going to do is that calculate's going to tell us how many BTUs Hot 2000 thinks we need for that system. If it is 7 kilowatts or 24,000 BTUs or more, then we're going to default to 7 kilowatts. And if it is less, then we're going to leave it at what it's at. Okay. So that's really important to know because in this version, we are going to be looking at one unit that is unmatched and one unit that is matched. Now, this setup is not specifically discussed in the Hot 2000 user guide or in any of the other ERS documents, but it is something that we as energy advisors run into quite often. So I'm sharing my workaround for it that I believe is very defensible in this situation. So as an example here, so our upper unit has a couple of mini split heads and our lower unit has a centrally ducted unit. The upper unit has an AHRI number, it's matched up. The lower unit is not. And we've got a weather location of Williams Lake here. So I'm going to open up the calculator again and we'll go through and see what to do here. Now this one is different in that in order to do the first step, we need to run through and do that calculate that I just described. So in this case, I've used one of my live files. I've just cleared everything out of it to give you an idea of exactly what I just said as far as steps. So we're going to say that the air tightness test is done. I've done all my upgrade models. This is after my N file has been completed on site. I'm comfortable. Everything else has been installed. I've updated my hot water tank, my window performance, my ventilation, everything's good to go. I'm ready to finalize the file. So I've left this screen till last. In this situation, we do have one centrally ducted system. It does have a gas furnace.
We just,
And
should we be seeing
oh,
a screen right now?
oh, Vanessa,
Sorry.
thank you for telling me.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got a live
Visualize,
file
everyone.
here.
We all have nightmares
Apologies.
about Hot 2000, so we can see it in our heads too, I'm sure.
Apologies. So I've got a full live version here that I've used. So this house has got a furnace and an air source heat pump as that centrally ducted unit. And then we're also going to have the mini split system. So I've just plugged in the furnace, condensing for now, and we'll jump into what we need for the heat pump calculator. Originally, I'd modeled this as a bunch of mini splits, but they've decided that they're going to change it. Everything else is done. I have this set at 1.25 times the cooling load, and I have the default settings here to follow the steps that are necessary for an unmatched unit. I'm going to run the calculate. This may or may not change. I've been mucking around with it quite a bit. So slow. Please don't crash. There we go. That's great. And I'm going to jump back in here and I'm going to record what this says for capacity. And that is 11,549. Okay, and that is important because now we're going to jump into using the calculator. Go back here. And just to be clear, you can see my calculator right now. All right, great. Okay, so on this one, we are in Williams Lake. So again, I'm just going to jump over and do that. We've got the mini split option in the upper unit. And that one, the AHRI number was 207 683 92. Presence, we'll import it. Presence is a PNN file. And this time we have a number of heads because it is a ductless mini split system. I'm just going to say 3. Okay, so this data is known because we have a AHRI certificate for these matched units. We do not for the downstairs unit. So we also do not have an AHRI number. It is present in the PNN file. And it is a centrally split system. Since it is not rated, it certainly is not Energy Star. And we only have one of these systems. This time, we have unknown values. We still want to put in any information that we've collected because NRCan still expects us to fill out that info field 6. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to make some stuff up here. Heating capacity. This is where that calculation that we just did will come in. So we know that 11,549, that is what was calculated for the Hot 2000 file. And then we know that these are the default settings that it wants us to put in. It's grayed them out because it knows, because we've told it that it is an unknown value on the system, that those are the default settings that need to go in there. So now we've told it that it's PNN. We've told this one it's a PNN. So we're going to jump over to the tab. It's reminding us to put that into info field 6 because we have a second system. Mark, I see you have a question.
Just wondering, is there a situation if you've done a final on the house, is there a situation where it would actually be, the capacity would actually be unknown because it should be on the sticker, shouldn't it? On the that you've taken a picture of?
We would have the capacity of the outdoor unit.
Yeah. Oh, I guess not the indoor unit necessarily though. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And if they're not matched up, we're not supposed to take that information as gospel. Okay. Okay, so here is what the screen's going to look like for the inputs for this specific system. Um, it's going to default to the mini split system being the primary one for the information and the unknown system being the secondary one. Generally, from what I've noticed, it's usually the larger system that it defaults to in here, but I have seen systems that are fairly balanced, and I'm sure it's got a rule set that I don't know behind it that makes it decide which one goes in that box. But just fill in the information the way it tells you to in NRCan, and your QAS team will be happy. Just to kind of play around with this a bit, if we were, so let's take a look at what the overall capacity was here. So it's 33,715. If we were to run that calculate and it did end up at larger than or 24,000 BTUs, the calculator does take that into account. So it is really important that we do that step first. Okay. And that, my friends, is the bulk of my presentation for today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask if I have missed anything or if we have any other questions. Or if I've just confused it worse.
No, this is great. We've actually we've seen a lot more work with the heat pump calculator. It's much larger than it used to be. It has a lot more bells and whistles to it now. Um, I'm curious about the mismatched units because we hear about this a lot, and I know it's not ideal, but just from this group, like, is that something that you're seeing a lot of? Is it something that you're not seeing a ton of? Is it something that you're trying to kind of educate the builders on what those default values really mean for them? I'm just curious.
Very regional. Like I know Jordan sees a lot of mismatch in his areas. On the island, we don't see as much. So I'm wondering if we actually have qualified installers here on the island and unqualified ones got run out of town with cameras.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
see unmatched units all the time, and then, a lot of times we'll hear from HVAC installers, it's like, oh well, American Standard and Trane are the same, or they all use this same like three different coils, so it doesn't matter which one you put in because they're all the same brand. I'm like, well, it matters for your HARI number, but work in progress.
Yeah,
That's
I found particularly when the tariffs were starting to come in, I had a couple of HVAC companies that just purchased a whole bunch of equipment and it was just outdoor units. So now they're just making them fit in people's houses because they have a warehouse full of them and they don't necessarily match up with the indoor unit that they are supplying as well. So that's generally where I see it, although I do primarily see matched systems.
Yeah, I see about like 25% unmatched, but they're typically at least the same brand. It's just the coil and the heat pump don't match up.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a comment here. I feel like the mismatch I see is often very slight. Like the brand is the same, but two or three numbers are off from what's in the AHRI certificate. Does that mean that it's unmatched and we must go default procedure?
if I was to say, if you were telling me that that was happening in the NRCan database, I would say go to the AHRI database and see if you can find it there. But if you're doing that in the AHRI database and the certificate is not available, if there is not a match, then yes, you would need to go to the default procedure.
Yeah, I think specifically a lot of times the sizing is off. Like the size of the heat pump is 4 tons, and then the exterior one is 4 tons, and the interior is 3 tons. And I think is that now unmatched procedure?
Yeah.
Well, that
Okay.
that would mean it wouldn't be working properly anyways because the one's over pressure for the inside unit.
Yeah.
I would say like if it's like because the last 2 or 3 digits are often like the color of the machine or something like I'd be less concerned about those. But if it's like that size issue, for sure I'd be concerned about
Yeah, there's another comment. This is what I was going to ask as well. There's sometimes an older and newer model together.
that.
Do we have any other questions about the heat pump calculator itself? Do you want Tessa to run through anything while we've got everybody
Mhm.
together and any examples? Um, we have you for
Are
the
there any
next.
other scenarios
I got one.
that I
How
didn't
come there's
cover?
not an import button for air source heat pumps?
Um, I think the import button links directly to the NEAP database, and that is primarily cold climate heat pumps, I believe. And I think that's why it doesn't match up. It doesn't have an import button for the AH or for the air source heat pumps. Um, I wish it did, but it does make you just do a little bit of work. It's still easier than doing it all manually, but it does make you do a little bit of work there.
Great. Okay, well, if we don't see any questions, I'll give you the rest of your day back. I appreciate you joining us today. As always, for Friday Fix, if you're not able to stay for the full session or if you register and you have to run off to site, we completely understand. We send off a link to the presentation so you have a reference point. So I'll be sending that out next week. I'm trying something new. I've just created a YouTube channel where we're holding all of our Friday Fix sessions together. So hopefully that works okay. I'll be sharing that link with you next week and you guys let me know if it doesn't work. But that way there's one place where you can go back and you can reference previous sessions. And of course, if there's any questions that you think of or something comes up and you want to clarify something, please reach out to us. And we're happy to connect you with our resident expert on the heat pump calculator here. But thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we're wishing you all a fabulous Friday and a great weekend. Thank you very much, Tessa.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.